So I've discovered a new YouTuber, Mike Urban, and he covers the Massachusetts area. He's a real estate broker, and he's done a few videos about the increasing electricity costs. So I thought I'd go into it, my take. There's a lot of things I like to talk about in his videos, but it's for some other days. When it comes to electricity, let me go into the history of Cambridge. So you had the Plymouth colony, right? It's colonized in 1620. And then basically 16 years later, 100, 200 Europeans were in Cambridge and they formed Cambridge. And so Cambridge had maybe a couple of hundred people in 1636 or something like that, right? And then basically the population stayed mostly the same from like 1630 to around 1800, let's just say. So 160 years or whatever. The population grew very small, very slowly. And the reason that is that, and I believe one of the reasons, many of the Puritans left England is England had already cut down the trees like centuries before, and so they were low on trees for wood for heating, right? And then so in the United States, you come here, you have all these trees, all these resources. It was great, but still, basically, you end up cutting down all the trees, especially in a cold climate like Massachusetts. And then it limits the amount of population. So population can only grow to the extent that it can regrow enough trees to heat somebody in the winter, right? And so that limits the population for the Europeans living in Massachusetts back then, just like the Indians and everybody else. And we have to keep this in mind. So if what happened is, and it's just a long story, but essentially humanity developed the basically three main technologies. The piston engine. Pistons were used in trains, in manufacturing equipment. But anyway, you need trains. With trains, you could go and you could get wood or you could get coal and you could bring it to Massachusetts. So with trains and coal and steam power and whatever, Massachusetts could grow. So Massachusetts grew tremendously beginning in the 1800s or maybe in the late 1700s. So without coal, Massachusetts would never have grown to what it is today. It would be back to living within whatever the wood you could grow and cut down and burn or create your houses with could support. You could say, okay, we could go and find it, take a horse, but I mean, there's a limit to how many, how much you have to feed your horses and get them to go. But anyway, that's basically a limit on human growth. And okay, I see I'm already at 3 minutes, right? And I'm sorry this is going to be a long story, but but I don't think anybody's going to watch this video anyway. Anyway, okay, so Cambridge wasn't growing until there was coal energy and we had the steam engine. And then it's grown tremendously. I don't have to tell you, right? Since 1800, we're now up to 6 million people in Massachusetts. And because after coal, you had coal, then you had oil, right? And a little bit of gas, right? But you really mixed coal, oil, and then now gas is big. And these are the reasons why the populations grew. So many people in Massachusetts are very wealthy. So we're all very wealthy here, and we don't want to accept. We don't want anybody to tell us, or even for us to think that maybe, hey, the energy is running out. Right? Not as much of it at all. Now, climate change is a big problem, but we're going to keep climate change completely out of this. Even without climate change, Massachusetts, the whole world, has a problem where basically half of all it's different for each one, but just to make it very simple, just half the amount of coal, oil, and gas, we've extracted it out of the ground and we've burnt it. And if you go to any geologist department at Harvard, MIT, Tufts, Boston College, Boston University, and you ask the expert there. You say, hey, some guy on YouTube said we've basically gone through half of all the oil, blah, 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 that's in existence. They might say, oh, I don't think it's half. I think it's maybe 30%, right? Or maybe they say it's 60%. But they wouldn't say that, oh, well, that's crazy. There's an unlimited amount, right? That we can go century after century. We can go thousands of years, right? Living the lives that we live because there's an unlimited amount of this stuff. There isn't. It's finite. But again, I don't think many they wouldn't say that's crazy. They would say, I don't really know. I mean, that's a reasonable guess. But Massachusetts is so wealthy, right? We don't want to hear anything about that. And same thing as climate change. We know that climate change is a problem, but we don't really want to deal with it. So politicians will basically, and this is where, not that Mike Urban and I think, would actually fundamentally disagree on this, but he's more like the politicians to be more accountable. And I agree, but it's not the politicians to me. I mean, to me, it's the public. It's everybody. So to think of how many PhDs, right, and people with masters and whatever, how many people with college degrees are running around Cambridge, where I live, right, and just Massachusetts in general. They all went to college. I mean, they all know that this is a finite resource, or they can go look it up. They should all know the history, right, of how Europeans ended up in America, right? How, yeah, sure, viruses wiped out a lot of the native people, but they should know that, like I said, until the Industrial Revolution, which the Industrial Revolution is sort of a bad word for it. It's really until we had the technology to exploit fossil fuels, there was very little population growth in the world. It's the fuel, not the technology. Don't get me wrong, it's not like the technology isn't important, but you can take the biggest gas generators, you can go take the Hoover Dam, whatever, you can take any sort of generator, the best technology of generators. Without fuel, it will not generate any power. Therefore, fuel is always primary, always. And so this fuel, and again, there's a difference between coal and oil and gas, but basically, let's just talk about coal, oil and gas. It was formed anywhere between 50 to 400 million years ago. And it took about 10 million years to form. And you can't rush it. And you need very specific geological conditions for it to form. Again, I won't go into this rabbit hole. Just take my word for it or go look it up. And so we've already figured out decades ago where all the big deposits are. Now, if you think that somebody's going to magically find some new deposit somewhere, I mean, you can believe that, but I say no. Okay. All these things can be debated. So you take this stuff that we're using in Massachusetts, what's grown, our whole lifestyle, everything I ordered here, like this cell phone, like even if you had a solar array, solar power at some factory in China or South Korea making this thing, but you don't, because solar electricity can only basically work to recycle steel. It can't really work to take the minerals and make like raw virgin good steel. Again, another rabbit hole. But whatever. Even if you accept it, okay, if some sort of solar, we can build the phones or whatever you have, everything around you in your house, the materials. How do you get it from the factory? You put it on a diesel truck, right? The diesel truck might go to a diesel railroad, right? And then go to a ship on diesel. And then on the other end, gets on a railroad, gets on a truck. Maybe in the last mile, sure, you have an EV Amazon van. But essentially, nothing reaches you without diesel. So like, just even get back to Massachusetts in the 1600s, right? So how did you get fuel for your fire? Well, again, a horse would be all you could use. But even in 1800, how would you do it? Well, in 1800, you'd have to have coal. And again, coal is a finite resource. And I've seen it said that we have anywhere to 50 to 25% left, right? So coal, you would need coal to to heat your house, but also, and this is what's so important, to run the railway locomotive to get the coal to you. All right. So, Massachusetts, again, we have to use these fossil fuels, which are finite and which cannot be recreated. I mean, yes, you can create some, gasoline and diesel and whatever, in a lab. You can create very small amounts of it, but you can't create anything close to the amounts that we're using. And even probably even the most difficult, not that, again, those are impossible in my opinion, but even more impossible, or I think nobody argues impossible, is jet fuel. Jet fuel comes out of oil, right? So where's the jet fuel going to come from? If we've gone through half our oil and we go through the other half in 200 years or whatever, where's it going to come from? It's not. I mean, jet fuel is just, there's no, again, technology cannot create it. Technology cannot create a fuel. A fuel drives technology. But the thing is, because all we see is the technology, our whole lives, our parents' lives, because the way we look at the world is through the technology, we think technology does everything. And that's why we believe when, Elon Musk says, I'm going to build this starship, this Tinker Toy thing, and I'm going to fly to Mars. Like, people believe it. Yeah, because technology can, do everything. Well, okay. Again, in the rabbit hole, too, starship is never going to work. So, we believe it because we're looking at the technology. And we see, oh, well, I can get AI on my phone, so technology is really important. But AI will not heat your house. No technology will heat your house. No technology will bring anything that you need, like stuff from the farm. Like, how's farm stuff going to get to you? It gets to you through diesel. It gets to you through oil. Now, what's happening is because we're running out of oil, that we're going to gas. So now we can start to get close to what Mike Urban is talking about. So gas was always basically a garbage fuel. Why? And again, all these people have college degrees, but they won't even research these very basic facts about it. So when I was a kid, gas, when they would go for oil, they just burn the gas off. But as they start running out of oil, they're like, oh, well, we had all this gas we're throwing away. What we'll do is we're going to take the gas and we're going to compress it, right? So we're going to refrigerate it, liquid natural gas, LNG, and then we're going to store it in a tank that's refrigerated, and then we'll use it. And that's generally where the world is sort of going. So the way energy in Massachusetts, the energy that we use to create electricity, is basically from gas. And how it works is most of it comes from Trinidad, though Trinidad's running out. So now we're getting alternate supplies from Qatar, and I think from Texas. So the gas comes. So wherever the gas comes out of the ground, there, right? You can't to store the gas in its native uncompressed format would take humongous tankers, right? It's just too much. So wherever it is, whether it's coming out of Trinidad or it's coming out of Texas or Qatar or wherever, it's immediately frozen, right? It's put on a ship and it's brought to Everett, right? Which is, I don't know, as a bird flies from here, it's, 10 miles. So it comes to Everett and it goes into a tank in Everett. And in the tank in Everett, it's allowed to boil off, and the gas comes out and it goes through the pipes and it comes to your home, and it comes to my home and it does my stove and my heating and whatever, right? It also goes to the power generators that creates electricity in Massachusetts. Again, that's how we get electricity. Now, Mike Urban was talking about Maura Healey, and she's like, she didn't want to do the pipelines, and he's saying, well, that was like a bad move. Like, yeah, and I sort of want to give you all this detail to explain why, when she was against the pipelines, and politicians like her were against the pipelines, and again, not just the politicians, people, where people around Cambridge and Massachusetts, like, yeah, no pipelines, we're going to fight climate change. The only way you can fight climate change is to consume less. That is, to burn less oil and gas and coal. That's the only way. To say that you're going to do it through EVs is just the net zero thing. It is such a scam. But I won't go into that rabbit hole either. And you can disagree with me. You can just think right there, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he doesn't believe in technology and like, we're going to get it. Like, we're going to get enough, wind farms and solar arrays. You just have to give it time. Okay. But I have to go do the research on that, okay? Because like take Cambridge here, right? You start to have a little run-up of solar installed. Solar installed in Cambridge has been going down since 2016, right? So why is that? Okay, it's going down. Wind farm projects are now being canceled. Why is that? Because the coal, the energy that's used to create these wind farms and these solar panels and whatever, can't compete against gas. Now, if you want to say, hey, I want to save the planet, I don't care what it costs, then that's okay. Then, yeah, you could do a lot more of it. But people don't. So when you have the electricity increases here in Massachusetts and people getting all upset, like at 10%, where is anybody saying, hey, listen, this is just the cost of solar panels? They didn't make that argument. Politicians didn't come out and say, oh, no, yeah, it's just the cost of the solar, because actually they know that's a lie. It has nothing to do with like the solar, right? They know that people don't care about that. It's all just a make-believe. It's a fantasy you want to believe that's going to fix some climate change. But when you want to heat your home, when you want energy for your business or whatever, you want the cheapest energy possible. And that's gas at the moment. So when she just says, oh, it's the corporations, it's Eversource, it's their problem, right? Or it's like distribution, or it's whatever. They come up with the cockamamie things, and now we're supposed to get like a $50 rebate. It is such BS. It's just mind-blowing that these politicians would lie about how things really work, and that this, of the most highly educated states, is so delusional. So literally stupid and moronic. I'm sorry, but it is. It is the definition. Like, what other word would you use? It's interesting that at a time in life when we actually need these words. So when I was younger, yeah, you'd call somebody stupid or moron. You just sort of like half joking. You're still a human. It's okay, whatever. But I mean, people then weren't. Well, okay, I'm going to drop all that. It's probably just annoying you. Okay, so she didn't want to put the pipelines because that's going to solve global warming, let alone the fact that, again, people want cheap energy. They want the energy at the cost they bought it from last year. And, of course, it goes up even just a teeny bit, and everybody screams, bloody murder, who do we have to blame? Well, I'm telling you, who do you have to blame? You have to blame your own ignorance. Why are electricities going up? Because you're ignorant. And because you're ignorant, and because you want to believe in a fantasy about solar and wind replacing cheap gas and oil, which we're running out of, what do you expect? What do you expect? Now, if Massachusetts had built pipelines, which Mike Urban points out, if they built pipelines, then you'd have various sources. It'd be cheaper to get gas. You wouldn't need to compress it all, because when you compress natural gas, you're burning a lot of natural gas to basically create the electricity, the energy to freeze the natural gas, right? So if you took one of those terminals and you said, hey, listen, we're gonna one of the things that hold all the gas, right? If you said, we're gonna take this tank and we're just gonna save it for the next 10 years. Well, how long would you be able to save that natural gas from, right? You just wait 10 years, right? No. In 3 years, it would be gone, because the gas in a liquid form, in a frozen liquid form in Everett, starts to boil off. And as it boils off, you have to re-refrigerate it, freeze it to put it back in. Otherwise, if you don't, the pressure will build up in the tank and it'll just explode, right? Just like a pressure cooker. It gets to a high enough pressure. So you have to keep refrigerating it. So 3 years, it would be gone. So gas, in a sense, it has to be used very close to the time where you actually extract it out of the ground. So when you refrigerate it, you're just like temporarily just moving it for a bit, but you basically have to use it quickly, because the longer you hold on to natural gas, the more you have to spend in other natural gas to basically just create the energy to keep it frozen. Again, this is all stuff that every college educated person should know. This is stuff Maura Healey should tell people. This is stuff that people should get up at these meetings and say, hey, this is a big problem with natural gas, like whatever. And there were people, I'm sure, that complained about, that pointed out the things I'm saying right now at the time. But again, that the mass delusion and fantasy of Massachusetts, that we're smart and we're going to figure out some technology to replace a fuel when no technology has ever created a fuel. They're completely two separate things. I want to hammer that home. Fuel, technology, completely different. One does not create the other. Technology is used to create work, power from a fuel, and a fuel will drive a technology. No technology creates a fuel. It just doesn't. So if Massachusetts had built these pipelines, then you wouldn't need all the cost of this refrigeration. So when she says, oh, well, it's the infrastructure cost of gas that's why it's really going up, and they're overcharging us and they should give us money back. Well, she's sort of right, because yes, the infrastructure of keeping gas cold and distributing it is expensive. But if you had, let's say, a pipeline from Canada, right, and the gas is coming down to the pipeline, it's easy to basically just, pause the just take what you want. Everybody along the pipeline could take what they want. You don't have all this cost. It's infrastructure and keeping it frozen, right, and freezing and unfreezing it or whatever, and you can use it. Not only that, but you have a second source. So you'd have the source in Canada. You'd have Trinidad. You have Texas. You have more sources. The more sources you have for any sort of commodity, right, the lower price you can get. This is all stuff, again, that's never, it's not like 10 years ago they didn't know any of this stuff. Again, geologists have known. Oil and gas were formed between 50 and 400 million years ago, and it took 10 million years at least to create oil and gas. It's been sitting in the ground for freaking, let's just say at minimum 50 million years before Plymouth, before they settled Plymouth and Cambridge was formed, for instance, in 1636. 50 million years. And when geologists discovered it, they knew it. They've known it for hundreds of years. This is not something that should be new to anybody in Massachusetts in the 2020s. So if somebody says, hey, I want to put a pipeline for gas, it's a very simple question. If you say, okay, I don't want climate change, and burning the gas can create climate change, then you burn less gas. That's what you do. But if somebody says, oh, no, but we have EV power, we're going to have windmills, and we're going to have solar, and so we won't need the gas, well, then you have to say, well, okay, well, how much solar and wind do I need? And can I get it all the times that I need it? All the questions. This is my requirements. Like, we know our requirements, right? So when all this started to get big, let's just say in 2010 or whatever, you 2010 say, okay, well, this is how much kilowatts we consume or whatever, and this is how much gas we need, whatever. This is what we need. So what can you do with solar and wind? And the person says, okay, well, we can do this. And unless that matches what the other thing matches, well, then either A, you get a pipeline, or B, you just get it frozen and unfrozen from wherever, and you accept that you're going to pay higher prices. There's no other option. You tell me the option. And what's happened, what's amazing to me, and I think what really frustrates Mike Urban is when they started the solar and wind farm stuff, they said it was going to go up like this. Well, no, it's gone like that. It hasn't done anything. It hasn't replaced any oil and gas. Maybe like a little bit. So like a lot of these consultants or whatever that, this whole net zero industry will say, oh yeah, we replaced, like we're burning less gas, we're burning less oil now because we have this, solar and wind. It's a minuscule amount. It's like, demand, economies, it changes, it goes up and down. So yeah, okay, it went down a teeny bit, but it really has nothing to do with the solar and the wind. The solar and wind have done nothing. They have not replaced our need for gas whatso freaking ever. And yet still, like what Mike was upset about was like, well, why isn't Maura Healey saying she was wrong? Because she was wrong. She's wrong then, back 5 years ago, to not look at the simple facts of what energy people need, and it's a fuel, where you can get the fuel, only one place. Technology will not create the fuel. And if you say it's going to be wind power or whatever, okay, say you do that. But, when are you going to admit that it's not working? And so now we're basically saying, she's saying, oh, well, it's a problem with with Everett and these guys and stuff like that. It's not. So now you're just like even making matters worse because you're not addressing the problem. You should be saying right now, like as of yesterday, you should be like, put that pipeline in. Until we figure something out, we have to put the pipeline in because we have to have gas. Or again, stop consuming so much. We say, okay, you know what? We're going to cut energy consumption by 50%. All right? Everybody has to stop by 50%. That's your only two choices. Only two choices. Those are the facts right now. Again, go to any university, ask anybody about this. This is not a political issue. This is a simple science and technology issue that anybody that works in these fields will tell you. Again, not a political person that's selling you net zero, solar on the roof, and all kinds of crap like that. I mean the people that really generate the power for you. Go to Eversource, right? Find some guy that quit, that he hates Eversource now, that he just loved to badmouth them. Find an engineer that quit Eversource, who you know is not like politically aligned with Eversource, and say, hey, listen, all right. Electricity prices are going up. Why? Why are they going up? Listen to what he says or she says. All right. So I guess I've gone on long enough. 26 minutes. But yeah, Massachusetts is the smartest, stupid state around. And electric prices are going to keep going up. Why? Because we're running out. I mean, all the cheap oil and gas is gone. It just going to get more and more expensive. And because we don't have multiple sources for it with pipelines, that's even going to make it more expensive because we only have a few sources. And if I'm Trinidad, I'm like, I'm going to raise the price on where else are they going to go? Same thing for Texas. So as we extract more and more of it, and it's harder and harder to get, the price is going to go up. We don't have multiple formats, so that's going to be the future of Massachusetts. But, it's the future for the whole world. Everything's going to go down because, well, again, I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole. So anyway, I wanted to do a video about the Mike Urban thing. I wanted to write it all out, but there's so many angles. So I thought I'm just going to do it free form like this and hope for the best. So if you're still watching, thanks for watching. Later.